Hi guys. Hi guys.
Okay, today we're just going to begin a series of, I suppose you call them mini lessons, in how to apply certain kinds of paper to a wall. That sounds very simple, but and it is simple, but this paper has some unique qualities. Now we have two kinds, and we also have various implements to help us get the paper on the wall. So I don't know, would we like to go through the list? What we've got?
It's really very, very simple. You don't need much. You need a brush to apply the adhesive or the paste. Just any rag or a cloth to be able to
smooth the
paper down. And then we've got the paste in here. That's actually left over from last week.
Yeah.
Rather than throwing it away, we thought we'll save it, and it's actually okay in a Tupperware.
Yeah, we'd like to take credit for making that in advance, but it's actually a complete accident. But now we've got the two most important things, which are two different kinds of paper. We'll be putting both papers on today because both have slightly different function, and being applied together, they actually help each other. But we need to explain the way in which they do that. So we start with the first paper, which is a kind of very thin. It's kind of a foil. It's an aluminium foil, isn't it?
It's aluminium foil with a paper backing to make it easier to apply. Of course, when you apply it, that's got to be against the wall, so the aluminium is actually facing away. It's very, very thin, and it's perforated, very micro perforations to allow the adhesive or the paste to actually come through that. But we found this paper was actually very easy to handle. It is very thin and can tear.
Yeah, I was going to say, just interrupt you slightly. The micro perforations, we do have a theory that because the design of the paper is actually to reflect radio wave energy. So you imagine a radio wave coming in, hitting the paper. It's actually designed to bounce it back, so it's a bit like a mirror. One of the interesting things about the paper is, Ren has mentioned the perforations. It's possible that the perforations act as a scattering medium, so they actually, when they bounce the radiation back, it's scattered, so the energy is diffused. That can be useful in some situations. In our case, it doesn't really matter because the wall we're pasting on actually has quite considerable distance behind it, so that's not an issue with us. The other thing I think we were going to say was that because the paper is quite thin, once paste is applied, it then becomes more difficult to handle. So we've taken to actually pasting the wall rather than the paper.
Yeah.
And we have a particular technique for actually pasting this particular paper to the wall, which we'll show you later.
Well, on top of the aluminium paper, you must have this EMR, electromagnetic radiation paper on top of it, because this actually absorbs all the radiation which is bouncing off here, so it doesn't bounce back into the room. So obviously you need that on top of that, and that absorbs everything. So it's a good way of if you don't need to have all your walls done, then even with one wall that would actually work.
That's right. I mean, if I can just elaborate, if you imagine that paper pasted to a wall, that's going to deflect incoming radiation from behind the wall, which is going this way onto the paper. But if you're only having one wall done, there's a problem in that any radiation in your room will actually come through one of the other walls, hit the paper, and actually bounce back into your room. I think there's a name for that, but I can't quite remember what it is.
I'm not sure.
Like secondary radiation or something like that.
Yeah, secondary.
So you need another paper on top of it to actually absorb any radiation that's coming off there. It will dampen some of the radiation as it comes in, but it will also absorb radiation coming out. So the two papers together make an ideal solution.
And I think just the final thing I didn't mention was you need a pair of just household scissors. If they're sharp, that helps. It doesn't really matter. We don't really recommend a Stanley knife because we found the Stanley knife actually tears away at the aluminium paper. So what we do is we actually cut all the paper. And finally, it's helpful to have a pasting board, but you don't really need one because we are putting all the paste on the wall. We're not pasting the wallpaper, which makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
This is just helpful. This is just helpful for us to actually cut the paper. So we fold, cut, and that's all it is. You can borrow one. I mean, you borrowed this from your brother.
We did.
And it's wonky, but it doesn't matter. You know, it's still working for us.
And in contrast to the aluminium paper, this paper is actually quite thick. I think it's got fibre in, hasn't it? Some kind of fibre, which helps it absorb radiation.
It's actually a fleece, and it's got paper cotton, and it's got carbon in there. So altogether, it does actually handle slightly different, but it's like a thick wallpaper.
Yeah.
But actually, we found this was very, very easy to apply on, much easier than normal wallpaper.
Yeah, because it's so thick, I mean, it doesn't really tear, so you can actually pull the paper off several times and reposition it. This paper also, it's you should know, you need to overlap it. So when you're putting it on the wall, normally when you paper a wall, you actually have the edges meeting as well as you can. This one actually you need to overlap because the job you're doing is actually stopping radiation penetrating through the wall. So that's just an extra precaution to take. So we normally have it overlapping at about 1 centimetre. About
1 centimetre roughly, actually. I mean, walls are not completely vertical, so you know you may find it overlaps 1 centimetre at one end and half at the bottom. But it's always good just to just to play safe and have an extra centimetre. And what's important is that aluminium doesn't show through. That's why again you've got to make sure all the aluminium is covered by this paper to avoid that the reflection back into the room.
Yes, and if you're concerned about the wallpaper making lines on the wall, remember that you can apply extra paste afterwards and use a small roller to actually press down the edges so that when you do come to paint the wall, the join lines will be less obvious.
The other way to actually reduce the joint lines, I don't know if you can look, if you look at the back, we've done all of that wall. You may be able to see very faintly the joint lines, but once it's painted, it may not be very obvious. But this actually comes as 1/2 metre, which is what this is. It also comes as a metre width, which would be double that. We went for this because we weren't sure how the metre one would handle. But now we've tried it and it's really easy. I think we'll probably purchase next time we'll probably get the metre, because that means you have less cuts and it's done in a lot quicker way. But it is really very easy to handle, I think, if 2 people are working together. So I think
that covers everything for this session.
Covers everything, but just to basically say, it's really 4 steps to put up this wallpaper. Step number 1, you mix the paste, leave it for half an hour, and then while that's mixing together, you could be cutting the paper. So you mix the paste, step 1. Second, you actually cut the paper.
I was just going to add, we use a paste which is fungicide free and free of all additives. It's a methyl cellulose, which in keeping with all our green credentials is probably the best one if you're sensitive to anti-fungicides and things like that.
So it's non-toxic, there's no smells afterwards, so you can sleep in the bedroom if you're doing your bedroom without having any sort of smells odors annoying you, etc. So that's and it's very reasonable as well, reasonably priced as well.
So that's step 1.
So step 1, mix the paste. Step 2, you cut the paper to the size of the wall and you start off with the aluminium. Step number 3, you apply the adhesive onto the wall with a brush, very easy, top to bottom, bottom to top, doesn't matter. And then you apply the paper. That's number 4. I guess number 5 is you just get the cloth and you just gradually bring it down. And that's how easy that is.
Yeah. We will probably see that when we're actually putting the paper on, but because the foil paper is so thin, you have to use very light strokes. So if you use too heavy a stroke, it'll actually stretch the paper and then it will crinkle and cause lines.
But we can explain to them that when we're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because I know we want to keep this really, I know you're all very busy, you want to keep it really short as possible, so you can hopefully have plenty of time left over to go and do your own wallpapering.
You can watch us make fools of ourselves next.
Okay.
All right.
We'll have to edit that one out.